Folks, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, place where I discuss different topics about spirituality, deep introspection, dream interpretation, and several other topics. Today I thought about a question that came to my mind uh, a few days ago, and it's a question that I've been hearing from other people who, they prefer, instead of slacking, they prefer being on this spiritual path and, remain and keep themselves hungry towards the truth. And this question came as something like, is anything in this life preordained, or, if one can say, destined to happen? Okay, many people have this impression that everything has been pre-programmed, and even some ancient civilizations may have been speaking about this. Well, what I feel is technically kind of the opposite. Everything that happens in this universe is not something that will happen for you, it won't happen to you either. It's just something that takes place, and well, it's up to you to interpret if it's been a sign from God, or if it's just something that, just happens. Because, when something happens, there is only one choice one can have. It's either you become wiser about this, and you grow, or you simply choose to create a circus in life and, can constantly suffer because of it. Now, the point about this is, well, is there anything preordained? Well, in order for something to be preordained, the point is it has to be programmed to happen so. And in order to program something, it has, well, it must require something conscious. Now, as you may well already know, the universe and, well, creation in its own way, they are not conscious because, well, they just constantly create, okay? They are unconscious creations and manifestations of life. Because if you would see consciousness, okay, so therefore if you see awareness, well, that is one point to take into account, because awareness always has a sense, of creation. It has a pattern, because awareness exists in a certain specific way. It can't exist, in a fully open space in a way, because awareness usually identifies itself with something, and awareness would usually come with subjectivity. Now, is subjectivity something bad? Well, there is no such thing as good and bad. It's just that there is a little point. Subjectivity is important in a way, but at the same time, make sure you don't identify too much with it. So the point is, when subjectivity becomes part of creation, creation will automatically acquire, let's say, a certain aspect of, a pattern or a set of patterns. Like, for example, think of how many people there are and how many thoughts there are, in people's minds, and especially, the lower vibrational ones. When you think about, hate and the such, right? People identifying themselves with just one single thing, right? If people, like, especially racists, okay, if they were given the power to create something beyond them, they would always create that under a certain shape, right? It's either gonna be just human, there's definitely not gonna be those things which they dislike, right? And kind of those aspects. So the universe is not conscious, okay? So therefore there's also no aspect of, racism or the such within the universe. And the universe is just like a video game. It has a certain code, let's say, because there's definitely a code or something that, allows all these, magnificent things to happen. But the point about that code is it's not a rigorous code like you see in video games. Each set of steps has to happen, and they always happen in that same specific order, okay? Nothing repeats, and to a certain extent, the mind can call the universe a bigger game, because the mind is always, desperate about meaning. So the point is, when you have a mind that desperate after meaning, you will most likely end up creating any meaning for you that will simply be satisfying, at least logically, okay? Because the mind is represented by three chakras in the body, and basically the three lower chakras. Now, the point about this is, well, the body itself is represented by 114, which understanding these, each of these, means understanding a certain point of life. So not even understanding your mind also means that you're not understanding this, the basic impulses of the physical body, and it means that most people will kind of end up living by them because, well, if you can't understand how they work and how they influence you, then it's also the point that you won't be able to analyze them and stop reacting to them, because that's the problem many people face. That is called reaction. Not reacting to things is a conscious way of living, okay? Now, unconsciously, the universe will constantly create, and therefore there will be events and all sorts of things happening. New creations appearing, things withering, and well, so on and so forth. And all these phenomena happen just because the universe, well, it's not that the universe deems it. People are too poisoned by this thinking, this way of thinking that there is something that governs this. There is no such thing as something that governs the universe. The universe simply happened, it doesn't matter how, because you cannot simply understand this. The mind cannot understand that. And why do you think it's called understanding? You're not standing on the point, right? You're not on the point. You're simply under it, but it only makes some logical sense to the mind. That is why the mind can be dangerous to people who live unconsciously, because the mind will only feed those who, well, feed it the most, right? If you feed your mind a lot of things, then you have a lot of distractions, right? And the mind provides a very good sense of security or a sense of stability, okay? And um, yes, let's say it like that. It provides a good sense of safety to those who feed it a lot, because people who feed their minds a lot, they always have so many things to think about, right? And to many people, it feels very safe because, think about it, it's always got something to think on, and you can always lie yourself that something is the way you think about it, right? That's how the mind can simply work, because the mind is nothing else than a voice that you speak with, and that voice simply doesn't have a consciousness of its own. So that is why so many people find it so easy to basically lie themselves and admit that certain situations are not detrimental to them, but instead actually even helpful, right? And it's the situation of so many people, but at the same time these people are still the ones who cry that their lives are very bad. But, well, life will always be bad if one does not know how to uh, take charge, let's say, of their own existence and the inner flow of resources that there are basically within us. Okay, so yes. Now, is there basically any conscious creation? Well, considering that on our planet most humans are kind of unconsciously living, not because society kind of promotes this, but at the same time it's also the impulses of our ancestors, okay? Because everything that you do, everything that you think, uh, you know every pattern that you create in your life, you also transmit it through your DNA and through your actions, through the Akashic records, to your followers. So the point is, the next generations will find it somewhat harder to resist your urges, your impulses, and that's why we have a society nowadays that is so easy to manipulate for example, from a sexual standpoint, because the ancestors, okay, have been through so much, so long periods of, repression, okay, of thought, and technically everything was shameful, and, Christianity always promoted this dumb god of love, but, you always had to fear it, you always had to feel ashamed of literally everything that you are, and you also had to live in misery because, well, you're promised a land of well-being afterwards. And of course this was done, many probably knew that if you lived in a horrible way, most likely you would die so, and, well, you would have to repeat the karmic cycle. So basically, the more this happened, the more prone people would be to embrace this suffering as if it's the only thing normal. And you can see it nowadays, people just prefer suffering unconsciously, just like animals, right? Because you can take a frog and put it into hot water, it will jump away. But if you leave it in water and you boil the water slowly, it won't give its comfort zone, and most likely it will even die. That's how many people unfortunately work. But I can't say unfortunately because, well, there is and there has to be no sense of attachment to this world. Because attachment means, in a way, a need, and it therefore means an expectation, which kind of is the, prerequisite for disappointment. So the universe at large, and well, in all its entirety, the universe is not conscious, okay? It just creates and expands, okay? It manifests through literally anything that it can, and well, it just expands and creates. There is no pattern in it, there is no necessity or anything in a way. It does have senses of balance, it does have a lot of certain things, but that is part of the, let's say, the coding that it was created. Now, each and every great civilization had their own story about how the universe was created. Still, this is not much of an importance to a certain extent, because this is just how people envisioned it. This is how certain people viewed it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the truth, but at the same time, you have to understand there are things beyond the mind, like life, and some of these concepts, that are harder to define. It is preferable not to define life and, the universe and the processes at large, because you'll only end up with a, much smaller, far smaller, opinion, because it's only a belief, and well, belief means accepting something without much necessity for proof. So, point be said, don't come up with definitions and interpretations on what you think life is or what other people think that life is. Okay, life is just to be experienced. So is anything in life preordained? Well, so many people claim things like that, and even astrology says it. And well, I'm not gonna say astrology is a hoax, because well, astrology has its own points, and well, astrology is kind of the best when it comes to unconscious life, because well, astrology will tell you which influences are the most prominent, right? And these influences, well, these influences that are the most prominent will always influence unconscious people the most, because well, they are the most prone to such aspects. They are the most easily to influenced, okay, by these things, okay, because there are and there will always be certain surges of energy that influence the planet also has its own. There are different energies influencing the planet and everything, from outside, like the other planets and the such, because science says that there is a supermassive black hole at the center of any galaxy. And now, considering that technically that is what keeps the galaxy together, we are also said to be 27,000 light years away from that. But to a certain extent, our solar system is influenced by that supermassive black hole's pull, okay, or the force of the spin force, right, that it induces in or the set of forces, basically, because there are more that allow or basically make the galaxy spin, right? It has a certain influence on that. So if such a force so far away has an influence on us, definitely objects closer to us, okay, definitely have an impact, right? Like the moon and the planets around us, and of course let's not forget the sun. So many people create all these silly YouTube videos and such. What would happen if the sun would suddenly vanish? And they are like, life will disappear in like 15 minutes. And it's like, I look at them and it's like, dude, people think so silly, okay? They are so simple-minded. It's like, if the sun would disappear, everything will die in several seconds, because the temperatures on the planet would drop to around minus 200 degrees, which means instant frost for literally everything. But people keep using their minds to imagine how plants would wither because suddenly there is no light, and to people, if the sun would go out, it's like, there's no electricity or something like that, okay? It's like, no, Without the heat from the sun, everything would instantly freeze, okay, like instant freeze and instant death. There is no other possible way. There is no 15 minutes or 15 days or whatever many days they believe plants will need to wither and then animals will die and the such, right? It's like, no, no, no. You're also making a presumption that, everything will die out of based on simple statistics, because the sun goes out and everything will go on just as normal, right? Like in a video game, if something happens, the player breaks something, everything else will just carry on because it's just unconscious, right? This just goes to show how simple-minded people are regarding the universe. And well, at the same time, that they will always create simple ideas about it, because when you have a simple perspective, it's easy to come up with simple so-called explanations. So the consciousness as a whole, okay, means liberation. It means becoming one with creation. To a certain extent, it means becoming fully aware of it, okay? And well, at the same time, it's kind of also means rejoining unconsciousness, but rejoining unconsciousness in the sense that you rejoin it, okay? You rejoin the process of creation as a whole, right? And it's kind of a mixture in which you're both conscious and unconscious, okay? You're not just fully unconsciously allowing everything to influence your life, right? You're not allowing circumstances to influence your life, okay? By taking hold of your mental energies, your psychological energies, spiritual energies, and like literally so many things, okay? And this thing with spiritual energies is kind of awkward because many people use this word, but they don't give much impression that they know what that basically means. But all this being said, hopefully you found this video a bit informative. You are loved and appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Ferenc Can Board signing out.